Okay, I'm Chris Avina, American Outdoor News. Welcome to the American Outdoor News Podcast. Today we're with Paul Atkins, outdoor writer, adventurer, and now book author. Paul, thanks for taking the time.
It's good to be here, man. I know you and I have been trying to do this for some time. I think you're in New York, right?
Yep.
And I'm in the Arctic, and I looked it up earlier how far apart you and I are at this moment, and it's about 4,200 miles as the crow flies. So yeah, but no, it's great to be here.
Couple days hike.
Yeah.
Now you originally came from Oklahoma.
Yeah, I grew up in Oklahoma. Actually, I was born in Arkansas because it's a good story. My dad was deer hunting over in that area, and my mom was over there too, and she ended up going to the hospital a while and had me in Arkansas. But I grew up in Oklahoma, northeast Oklahoma. Grew up on the farm, grew up on the ranch. Was around livestock all my life, and yeah, I grew up there and went to school at Oklahoma State and got a degree in agriculture actually.
Wow.
And yeah, I did with animal science, did a bunch of that kind of stuff, and always thought I'd go back to the farm, but I didn't. So yeah.
How the hell did you end up in Alaska?
Well, it's a good story because one of my uncles was a firefighter in Oklahoma City back in the day, back in the 70s, and he retired. And my aunt, she got a teaching degree, and she said, this was back in the 80s. Okay, she said, I'm going to go to Alaska. So basically, they just spun the globe and they just picked it on the map, Alaska, and they hit Kotzebue. So Kotzebue, for those of you who don't know, is about 30 miles north of the Arctic Circle. Up here, we're about 160 miles from Russia, off the coast. But she came up here, and she was here about 10 years, maybe 11. And when I was fresh out of college, I used to come up and just hang out with them. And one year I came up and I was in between jobs. I'd been teaching school and I was doing construction. And the principal at the school said, hey, would you like a job? And I said, hey, yeah, let's do this. And that was in 99. And, I came the next fall and I'm still here.
A temporary thing ended up being a lifetime.
It's a lot. I was only going to stay a year. That was the goal. I was going to stay a year, do some hunting, write a few stories, and head back. And then after a year, it was 5 years, and then 10 years. And then I ended up meeting my wife here pretty quickly after I got here. My son Eli was born here, and he just graduated 2 days ago. And
congratulations.
So yeah, thanks, man. That was something. But yeah, kind of a weird story, but it's been a great story.
Now, it must have been a hell of a learning curve coming from Oklahoma to moving to Alaska full time, especially so far north.
Yes, it was, Chris. It was. I think the biggest thing was it's the weather. You hear how people talk about extreme temperatures. Now it gets pretty cold up here. The coldest I ever seen it here in the Arctic was 81 below real temperature. I've seen the wind chill a lot colder than that. So that's the big thing. But it's just another thing though. And people think, oh, that's so cold. Well, I tell you, I've been down and hunting in Louisiana and Texas and during the winter time down there. And if it's 20 degrees with all that humidity, I've been just as cold in southern Oklahoma and Texas and Louisiana than I've been up here. But how you hear people talk about what did they say in Arizona? It's a dry heat.
It's a dry heat. But it's 120 degrees. I don't care if it's dry or wet.
Up here, it's a dry cold. It really is. We have hardly any humidity. So, and this is how accustomed I've got to it. It was 27 yesterday. It's 31 today. It was 27 yesterday. I was wearing a t-shirt outside at 27 degrees. Okay.
Wow.
Now, if I was doing that down there, I would probably get frostbite. So, but yeah, the weather was probably the biggest. Also living in Kotzebue up here in the Arctic, we have no roads. The only way to get here is by jet. So I can't just get in my truck and drive to Walmart or Taco. We don't have any of that kind of stuff. This is real village life up here.
Do you by chance own a jet?
No, I wish I did. I probably, yeah, if I owned a jet, I'd probably be, hopping all over the world, hunting and fishing, and that's all I'd be doing. So, but no, we have a 737 that comes in here twice a day.
Wow.
So,
All right.
yeah, Kotzebue is kind of the hub. You got all these villages on the outside, and Kotzebue is kind of the hub, and this kind of everything comes here, then goes there. So, yeah.
All right. Well, what was it like, the adjustment? I mean, was the weather just the adjustment? Are you
No, I think
a town or a wilderness? I mean, what's around your house?
Well, it's a small town. There's only around Kotzebue. If you guys look on the map, it's up. I don't know how they do Alaska like this.
Yeah.
It's up here. It's on the northwest. It's on the northwest coast. Kotzebue used to be here's a tidbit. Kotzebue was the polar bear hunting capital of the world back in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s.
Wow.
If you go back and look at any big game book, any record book, you'll see that all the bears come from this area. They didn't actually hunt them in Kotzebue. They got them on the pack ice, but all the guys would fly into Kotzebue. But no, as far as the biggest adjustment was just, I think, isolation a little bit. Kotzebue has a population of about 3,000, which is pretty big. It's one of the bigger towns in Alaska. But, you can't just leave. If you want to go anywhere, you got to buy a plane ticket and fly to Anchorage, Anchorage is 600 air miles from here, south.
Okay.
So that gives people an idea. But I think that, and the darkness, it doesn't get total darkness like it does in Barrow up north, but it does get dark back November, December. So that's kind of tough. Right now we've got light 24/7. When in the early days, that was tough for me. You can't sleep. But nowadays, you go to bed at midnight and sun's up, and it's not a big deal. So just things like that, adjusting to those kinds of things, which over time has been easy now.
Well, you've written hundreds of articles, including for American Outdoor News.
Yeah, been my privilege too.
How'd you get into writing?
Well, that's really a good question. I am a school teacher by trade. I've done it for 33 years. I've taught school. I don't teach English though. My wife teaches English. I teach math, but nowadays I used to teach, it's a weird world, but back in the early 90s,
you do the writing and your wife does the bills?
Yeah, there you go. That's about right, actually. No, back in the early 90s, I'm a bow hunter that's my first love is bow hunting. Okay.
Yep.
Back in the 90s, I lived in Kansas for about 10 years where, anybody talks about Kansas, big whitetails, big whitetail deer. And I had the opportunity to be right in the middle of all that. And I was also I used to shoot a lot of 3D archery. And I was pretty good at it. And I used to travel to all these big shoots and stuff. And I got to know people. And one of the people that I really like to follow and read was Chuck Adams. Everybody knows who Chuck Adams is, great bow hunter, well known. And I don't know, I just loved reading his articles. And then I met Jim Dartery. Jim Dartery wrote for Peterson's Bow Hunting, and Jim was from Tulsa, and I got to know Jim, and he used to score a bunch of my animals for me. And I just love these guys, and I love to read their stories. And then I was also into Rourke and Capstick and all those Africa guys.
Sure.
And I thought, when I was young, I thought, I want to do that someday. And in 1993, I wrote a story about my first whitetail with a bow. And at the time, there was a magazine called American Bow Hunter. It didn't, like some magazines, it didn't last very long. Back in those days, it was tough. Print was tough in those days. And it got published, and I just took off from there. I was doing the stuff. I was out there doing it. I thought I might as well write about it. And, I got turned down more than I got accepted. And I mean, that's what it took. I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Excuse me. And I finally, I got to where if I would write something, it was going to get published. Now, I'm not bragging because it took years and years for that to happen. And then I hooked up with the right people and the right editors and guys that, they wanted the material and they seen what I was doing, and it just took off, and it got to be, 10 or 12 stories a month in 10 or 12 different magazines.
Wow.
It actually be, and I'm not complaining because it works good. Anytime you get asked to do something, that's a great thing. But it got to the point where it was constant. It almost was overwhelming. It became work, and but it was all worth it. And I think 450 stories later, it's good.
Well, I got to say, I've enjoyed your stories, but
Thank
more
you.
than the stories, who takes your pictures? Your graphics are phenomenal.
No, she doesn't. My buddy, I have a good friend. He doesn't live here anymore. My buddy Lou Pagel, Dr. Lou Pagel. He's a chiropractor in town. Him and I hooked up about 10 years ago. And that's when it really took off with the writing. And he was an avid hunter, just like me. He's a big waterfowler, more than I ever thought I would be. But that was his part in the story. If you read my book, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, I guess. Without his photography skills, I probably couldn't have done hardly any of the stuff. But him and I would hunt. That was my hunting partner. And like what they say about hunting partners, it's hard to find a good one.
Yeah.
And he was my photographer, and we had cameras, and we lived it, and we did it every day, every weekend, all the time. And he knew how to take photos. A lot of people, and I've written about this in some articles and stuff. A lot of people, they just take a picture and stuff, but it's really a science. And to get good articles for good stories, you got to take the time, and you got to take a bunch of them, because if you can get one out of 100, then that's great. And what we always lived by was the photo you don't take is the one you should have took, and that's kind of how I've always looked at it. And we really took our time with photos.
So you put together a compilation of stories for your new book.
Yeah, actually, I got a copy of it here. You want me to show it, Chris?
Sure.
I don't know if you guys see it there. Yeah, Atkins, Alaska. True tales of hunting, fishing, and surviving in the far north. Yeah, I had, like I said, at the time, whenever I put this together, I had about 400 to choose from. And it was kind of tough getting it down to 40. I picked 40. The book itself is like 300 pages long, but it's got 40 stories that I picked. And they're not epic. There's one in there that it's kind of long, but most of them are 2,000, 2,200, 2,300 words. Just short little pieces, short stories, I guess, of some of the adventures I've had here in the Arctic, ranging everything from muskox to grizzly bears to fishing trips and moose, caribou, sheep, goats. And, a lot of those were where, things got pretty scary pretty quick. Like a couple of stories about, bear hunts and stuff that have gone wrong, a goat hunt that went extremely wrong, and, a muskox hunt that where we about froze to death. So there's a lot of adventure in there.
Well, I would imagine there was a hell of a learning curve from hunting in Oklahoma, Kansas, the states, to really venturing out into the wilderness.
Right, exactly.
I would imagine there's a vast difference in hunting. What was the most compromising thing that has happened to you out there?
Well, that's a tough one, because there's been several, and you're right. Climate, back home, we tree stand hunting, blind hunting, spot and stock. I miss that stuff more than anybody will ever imagine. I really do. There's nothing. We don't have trees here. Okay, first of all, so I miss climbing a tree. But the biggest challenges for me in the early days was bears. Bears were, and they're actually, that's one of the problems in northern Alaska, and maybe all of Alaska, is we have such a bear problem, a predator problem. They complain about not having any moose, not having any caribou. And, a lot of times the resident, non-residents, they get into a fight over who's who to blame, that kind of thing. The problem in Alaska is bears.
Yeah.
Big time. We have too many, and nobody hunts them anymore, But most of the compromising situations I got in were with bears. And if you read my book, my first story is called Dangerous Game. And that's when I actually got charged by a bear and I was with another guy that he was a novice hunter. A friend of mine I brought up from the lower 48, and he, it got to the point that I thought it was over, but I actually ended up shooting that bear at 8 yards. And
it's a little too close for comfort.
Yeah, that's pretty close. And got that bear. And the way it went is the bear charged me. We were hunting moose at the time, way up north, further north than here. And I seen something in a ravine. Something charged our tent that night. It was a bear. So the next day we got up, and we had a raft blown up that we were going to float the river. The bear had eaten the raft, tore it to shreds, and he charged the tent that night. So the next morning we got up, we didn't get much sleep that night, crossed the river, and we're looking for moose, watching for bear. And this bear we see something in a ravine. I just see the back of it, and it's kind of got some cuts and stuff. And I thought, well, that's a moose, because it looked like the top of a moose. And then he stuck his head up over the top of that burb, and his eyes met mine, and he was at 30 yards, and I had a bow in my hand. And my buddy, Carl, he had a rifle, and I just grabbed his rifle and brought it up, and 8 yards.
Brown bear?
Yeah. Big brown bear.
Pretty aggressive.
Yeah. And then he went off in the willows. I didn't know whether I killed him or not. So 2 hours later, I have to get the nerve to go in and look for him. And, I write about, and I've been to Africa. I've hunted Cape buffalo. And if you read stories like that, where they got to go in after an animal, a buffalo, a leopard, a lion, whatever it might be, that was my first experience with being scared to death happened, but you knew you had to go do it. So that's kind of what those PHs and stuff felt over there, I think. But yeah, that was pretty compromising with the bear. I once had a situation with another story, a goat, my first goat hunt. Well, actually it was my third goat hunt. I didn't get a goat the first two. We were hunting down on Kodiak, and we were climbing a mountain, and I stepped, my step was a little too long, and I slipped. And if it hadn't been for my backpack and my rifle in my backpack that catching on the grass and ice,
Ooh.
It would have been the end of me, probably.
Yeah, those when you're climbing up those mountains, that's physically demanding, and every step counts. Yeah,
it's probably, the goat hunts are by far the toughest hunts I've ever been on, because you got to be in shape, and you got to be prepared. You got to be prepared physically, emotionally, mentally. And, that about ruined it for me. But the next year I went back and got it done. And that's probably one of my greatest accomplishments is my goat. So I'm very proud of that hunt, actually.
Yeah, you wrote about that.
Yeah, I think it was in America. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you said that.
Outdoor news with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably I felt like my greatest accomplishment, my greatest hunt. So, but yeah, great. Proud of that one. But
we're going to take a quick break here to acknowledge some of our sponsors. Underwood Ammo, always a standard of excellence. Pyro Putty and Phone Scope, very innovative products, and Hunt of a Lifetime. We're going to hear from them in a second.
We love our children. We protect them. We guide them. We prepare them for life in the world. With all that we do, from deep in our hearts, we cannot control all things. Life-threatening illnesses and disabilities affect far too many of our children each year. While we cannot change the circumstance, we can make dreams come true. Dreams to provide hope, to provide spiritual healing and strength, to provide moments of happiness and relief in the hardest of times. We can give a glimmer of light and hope in a time of darkness and despair. Join huntofalifetime.org to help make dreams come true, to provide hope for children with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Hunt of a Lifetime is a non-profit organization fulfilling dreams for hunting and fishing trips to youth 21 and under with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Visit huntofalifetime.org to learn how you can make a difference.
Okay, and we're back. All right, so you're on all these adventures, and was the bear the only near-death experience you had, or there's
No.
got to be more compromising
Oh, there's more.
situations you got yourself into?
Yeah, a lot of them has had to do with cold weather. My buddy Lou and I was talking about Lou earlier, my photographer. He drew a muskox tag down south about 90 miles from here, down in the peninsula. And it was the last day of the tag was good. It was middle of March, and we had been hunting muskox for probably 3 or 4 weeks before, but we just couldn't find the right bull. So we decided on that last day to go down there. It was like 35 below zero when we left here on snow machines, and we had to go across the pack ice, and the further south we went, the colder it got. And we ended up, I mean, it's in the book. It ended up when we left, when we got to muskox, and when we left, it was 48 below zero. And we had so many problems getting there. You know, it was cold. Yeah. You pull gas, you got your snow machine, you got a sled on back.
Yeah.
You got gas cans in there. My gas can busted a hole in it, so I lost all the gas. And, at 30 below, if you take your hands out of if you got mittens on, which we do, we wear beaver hats and, sealskin gloves, all these kinds of things. And anytime you have to take your hands out, it's going to freeze. And we ended up getting down there. We go across the pack ice. We get to land. We search for muskox. We can't find any. Late in the evening, we find them. Lou gets his bull. It's 48 below zero. The best part of that was actually gutting that bull, field dressing that muskox, because you actually got to warm up.
The warmest part.
You get your hands in there, you can get them warm up, But and then we get him on the sled, and we're going to come back, and then I hit the key on my snow machine, and my snow machine won't start.
Oh boy.
And then we're 100 miles from home. It's 48 below zero. We got 2 machines, a sled full of muskox, and it's cold. And so we ended up tinkering with it. Finally, it started, and we got gone. It's dark. We're trying to find our trail back to, and down here, you got shelter cabins about every 25, 30 miles, kind of like safety cabins.
Yeah.
So you got to get to cabin to cabin to cabin, and you get, where you need to go. And we got to the pack ice, across the pack ice again. Instead of going the trail we came, we tried to make a shortcut. Well, Lou's in front of me. He's pulling his sled. He's got his muskox. I'm behind him. He's going along. I'm going along. And I look up and I see the sled on Lou's machine go through the water, go through the ice.
Jesus.
He went on, but I had to go through that. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to have to deal with this open lead in the pack ice. And I just thought, it scared me to death. And that's probably the most scared I've ever been, because I just hit the throttle and I went down into the slush, but I came out, my skis caught on the other side, and I got out of that. But I was coated in ice water that turned to ice immediately. I was freezing to death. We got to the cabin. Lou had no idea that that even happened, because you can't feel what's going on behind you if you got a big sled on. And we get to the cabin, and this is an old cabin, doesn't have any firewood in it. So we got to go to the next cabin, which is 25 miles. And you're wearing goggles, and they're frosted up. And the only way you stop, you pull the cowling up on your snow machine, you take your goggles off, you throw them in there side the motor so they can get warmed up, get the fog off, put them back on, and drive more. Then do it again and again and again. And by this time, I had frostbite inside both nostrils so bad. But there was just no way around it. I mean, my eyes were frozen. Everything was frozen. But we got to the next cabin, and we couldn't find the cabin. We're running up and down the coast. We're on the coast of the big lake. And finally, everything's dead. The GPS is dead. I'm shaking uncontrollably. And finally, Lou pulls up, and his headlights on his snow machine sees the green painting on this cabin, this burrow cabin. And once we seen that, we knew we were safe, because we knew there was wood in it. So we get in there, build a fire, and stay for 2 hours. It was 5:30 in the morning. And when we left, and we got home at, 6:30 that morning. That was close.
I don't think there's anything worse than being frostbitten, cold,
Yeah.
freezing
Yeah.
to death.
I tell you what, it hurt so bad for like the next. You can see it in there, you know. And I've had frostbite before many times, and most of the time it's my own fault. But yeah, I can still feel it right now talking to you. I can feel it right here. I can feel it inside my nose a little bit. So something that never goes away.
Some things just stand out in your memory.
Yeah, yeah, and that was one of them. That one I'll never forget.
So what would you say to a novice coming to Alaska for the first time?
Well, if he's coming to hunt, I guess it depends on what he's coming to do. If he's coming up here to hunt, and then he's going to leave, he's going to come, stay a little bit, then leave. Then I think that sounds like an easy question, doesn't it? But it's kind of hard for me to answer because
There's a lot to cover.
there's a lot to cover. It depends. It has so many circumstances on what you're doing.
All right,
Okay.
somebody's coming on their first hunt to Alaska.
Coming up to hunt caribou up in
How do
up
they?
in, unit. I live in unit 23. It's about the size of Indiana. Okay, that gives
Wow.
somebody a perspective. Where I
What
live
do
is
they-
about the size.
What do
of
they
Indiana.
pack? How do they dress? What kind of shape do they need to be in?
Okay, well, you always need to be in the best shape you can be in. That's what I always say. Well, everybody's not cut and works out every day, but be in the best shape you can be in. Buy the best rain gear you can afford. Okay, buy the best rain gear you can afford because I guarantee it. While you're in Alaska, it's going to rain. Don't wear leather boots. Buy knee-high rubber boots. Buy the best knee-high rubber boots you can find. Muck boots, boots by Cabela's, those insulated ones. That's all I wore for years. Be able to shoot. Be accurate. Be able to hit what you're aiming at. Okay, whether with a bow or with a rifle or whatever you're doing. If you want to, if they won't die unless you kill them. That's what I tell everybody. So you got to shoot them in the right spot. So be able to shoot. Be good in camp. Be a camp person. Camp is the most important thing on any hunt. It's more important than shooting and rain gear and anything else. Take care of camp. Okay, I've had a lot of guys that come up and hunt with me that are really good at that. Good, they take care of camp, but I've had other guys that just want to sit at the fire. It's always got to be taken care of 24/7. Gather firewood. First thing you do when you get to camp is you get as much wood as you can and you cover it with a tarp. Okay. Bring 2 tents. One to sleep in, one to store your gear in. What else have I learned over the years? No leather boots. Bring a frame pack. Don't worry about bringing just a little backpack. Bring a frame pack. It helps. Buy the best camera you can buy and bring it. Phones, cell phones today are phenomenal for anything. I've videoed whole hunts with a cell phone.
Yeah, it's true.
Binoculars. Yeah, they can. It says your internet connection might be a little iffy on this end, Chris. I hope it lasts. But yeah, binoculars. Buy the best you can afford, just like anything else, I guess. And have fun. Enjoy your time. Okay. Take some chances. Bring a fishing pole. All those kinds of things. But probably the biggest thing is to have fun. Have fun. Enjoy it.
All right. Well, we're running out of time here, but I appreciate you coming on. Where can we find your book? Aside
find
from
my
in
book-
American Outdoor News.
Right. You can find it there, which is a great spot. And you can also find it on Amazon. Just type in Atkins, Alaska on Amazon. They have plenty and their shipping's a lot faster than me. If you want a signed copy, you can email me at atkinsoutdoors@gmail.com. And I can send you one. It might take a little longer because we live so far away and it takes a while to get there. I've had guys buy it that haven't got it yet. But anyway, Amazon seems to be the fastest, and it's soon to be at any bookstore in Alaska and maybe on Barnes and Noble. What's that? I'm sorry.
I'll pick it up off of Amazon. It'll be a lot faster. I'll get it before the spring thaw.
Yeah, you'll probably get it. Yeah, these guys probably won't get it till June, but you can probably have it in a couple days. So, but yeah,
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your stories, and I look forward to reading the book. We'll see this on Waypoint in a couple days. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
All right.